Hey guys, well, it's a beautiful sunny day here on the North Oregon coast, and I should be out in the woods working right now. But I'm going to spend the afternoon in the shop working on my truck instead of my real job here. This is my 2012 Ram 3500, and I actually haven't done any videos on this before. This is my main work truck. This is the one that I drive in the woods most of the time. And I drive a lot on gravel roads, not just any gravel roads, but logging roads. That are usually pretty poor condition. They're rutted, lots of potholes, washboard, steep hills, things like that. So the truck's in four-wheel drive most of the time when I'm off of the pavement. And I do a pretty good job. This truck's got 130,000 miles on it. I do a pretty good job of keeping it clean and well-maintained and lubricated and everything. But, those kind of conditions are just rough on drivetrain components. So yesterday I was up near Forks, Washington, and I heard a telltale squeak starting from the front end, and that turned shortly thereafter into a click and a bang and a pop. And I could definitely tell it was coming from the front driver's side wheel, and I just know I've lost another U-joint up there. I've put a couple in it before, and it looks like it's time to put another new one in there. So I figured I'd set up the camera and take you guys along as I swap that U-joint out. Now that I got the wheel out of the way, it's a little easier to see what I'm looking at here, but a little bit of movement here, and you can see, especially on that bottom ear. So this thing's shot. Hopefully the ears on the axle shaft aren't damaged. Well, I got one of these lights under here. I thought I'd point these things out. I've gone through lots of different work lights for doing automotive work, and these are definitely my favorites. So much so that I ended up buying 8 of them. I actually carry 2 in each of my work vehicles and then keep a couple in the shop here as well. They just recharge via USB, micro USB port right here. I've got magnetic bases on them so you can stick them wherever and they stay there. And then of course they articulate as well. But I love these things. They're on Amazon. They're I'll post a link to these in the video description, but these are definitely my favorite work light. Hands down, the most functional ones that I own. Get a little better angle here. Maybe we can see it a little bit better. But that bottom part of that U-joint is just totally toast. And I mentioned earlier, these are not the factory U-joints. These are aftermarket ones. I've already swapped these a couple times before. And so these do have grease zerks in them. And this is probably a lubrication related failure. However, I do grease these. Pretty much every time I've got the front tires off, I've greased them. So, and I know they were greased in the last few months here, but you know, who knows? Maybe the seal failed and allowed some water and debris in there and washed the grease out. You know, maybe the passage was plugged and then when I was greasing them, grease wasn't getting into that cap. I don't know. But yeah, regardless of the reason, it needs to be replaced. Oops. Now, I assembled this front axle here about a year ago. I actually got a wrecking yard one and trussed it up. And the reason is because my factory axle had a slight, like a couple of degrees of bow to it. And I've been told these AAM front axles, even though it's in the front of a 1-ton truck, have a propensity for the short side bending right in the casting back here. So I trussed the crap out of mine and rebuilt it with mostly new components. So where I'm going with this is I'm going to make removing this unit bearing look pretty easy. A lot easier than it really is, because I already had it out of there and I coated everything in never sees. It can be a real difficult task to get this thing out. One of the things that you can do is actually put a hardened socket in here and then maybe a spacer or two, and then use the power steering actually as a hydraulic press to press on this against the casting right here, and that'll actually press the unit bearing out. When I get all these loose, I'll probably be able to just give it a couple light taps with a hammer on the bolts and it'll probably come right out. But just be aware, if you're doing this project, this can be difficult to remove. Where's that 2mm? This axle shaft is just ready to slide right out of here, but got to be a little careful. I need to be careful to support the inner axle shaft back in here because there's an oil seal back in the housing here, and that's actually new. I put that in when I rebuilt this front axle, so I just got to be careful to support that so the splines don't end up damaging the sealing surface on the way out. I'll do just a little bit of cleaning here. It's important to make sure that these surfaces here, these corners, don't have any debris in them. And these surfaces are clean because the unit bearing needs to slide in and actually seat up against all of this right here. And if you don't, you end up ruining the unit bearing or the U-joint or something here. We got this thing on the bench and you can see a little better. Look at all that play right there. Yeah, and I mean, you can see the grease around the Zerk. You can even see the grease around these other caps right here. Oh, I don't know, must have been a seal failure or something. It is what it is. So there's a few ways to get this U-joint disassembled, and my favorite way is this tool right here. Unfortunately, I've only got one size, and it's too small. This fits in the end of my air hammer, and on a smaller U-joint, probably even the drive shaft U-joints in this pickup, this opening covers the cap right here, and you just put it in the air hammer and then pull the trigger, and the cap comes right up into the into this opening here. So we can't use it on this one, so of course if you're in the field you can use a socket and a hammer and a pinch. That works to just pound it out of there, but since we're in the shop, we're going to use the hydraulic press. Okay, I've got this axle in my press here, ready to press it out. This is a socket. It's not hardened press tooling. Don't have any tooling that's large enough to accept the diameter of this U-joint cap. With the number of times I've done this job, probably I should buy one. But anyway, not the right tool for the job, but it's the only tool that I have to do this. So call me an idiot if you want. Done it before, I'll probably do it again, and it's going to work just fine. It's pretty dry in there. Yeah, you know what? See, this area is rock hard right here. I'd say for whatever reason, when I was greasing this, there was no lubrication making it to these end caps here. No way for me to really tell that unless I grease it so much that seal blows out. But you know, can't do anything about it now. This cap is the one that was really had all the play in it. And there's no needles left whatsoever in here. They've all turned to dust. Fortunately, it never really made it through to the yoke at all. So this stub shaft is just fine, and I'll be able to clean this up, press the new U-joint in, and we'll be back in business. Yeah, the two caps that were in the main axle shaft, those are lubricated just fine. They have no wear or damage or anything else. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll continue working here and get this thing back together. Now, one of the things I like to do when I'm doing U-joints is to put a little lube inside of the ears here, and just hand sand with some really fine grit sandpaper. And to be a little careful. The idea is not to take off any of the base material, but just to smooth out any ridges, rough edges, and get all the dirt and grime out of there. And that makes the cap slide in a little bit easier. Of course, if you get too aggressive and you take off the material, then caps aren't a press fit anymore, so gotta be a little careful with this. But in years and years of doing this, I've never actually experienced that problem. So the other thing you have to worry about is this surface right here. Since this uses inner C-clips, the clips actually go in on that surface. If you have any rust or scale buildup in here, it can make those clips just about impossible to get on there. And so we'll clean up that surface as well. I got my new U-joint right here. Basically what I'm going to do is just put the cross right in here and then drive the caps in from the outside until I can seat the clips. And then we'll do the same thing with the stub shaft right here. It's actually quite a bit easier to reassemble one of these than it is to take it apart. Of course, you want to be careful to not unseat any of the needles in here, but if it's well greased, it's usually not a problem. I'm just holding this in here so that I don't jar loose any of the needles as I'm tapping it. Okay, I've hit this U-joint with a shot of grease just to make sure that everything's properly lubricated, and I've put some gear oil on the sealing surface here for the seal and the splines as well, so I try and save the seal when I put it back. And then I went ahead and greased the upper and lower ball joints. Now these are not factory ball joints. The factory ones don't have grease zerks, or at least they didn't on this truck, but when I rebuilt the front axle I put some lifetime ball joints in here. So yeah, everything's greased up and ready to go. We're ready to put this axle shaft back in here. Decided my caliper sides were feeling just a little sticky, so I pulled those out, cleaned them up, and put some caliper grease on these. That feels better. Now eventually this grease just washes out of these brake shoe clips here, but this will keep things from squealing for at least a little while. All right, that's it. Lug nuts are torqued and the truck's back on the ground. Everything's all back together and I'm back in business. So headed back into the woods tomorrow to get some more drone work done. I know this is just kind of a routine maintenance sort of a video, but yeah, sometimes I enjoy watching those on YouTube, so I thought I'd set up the cameras and share this one with you. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and we'll see you on the next one.